The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber opened with a low hum. Ambassador Hyunwoo Kim walked through them with steady steps. His black suit looked simple compared to the colorful robes and armor of the alien delegates around him. But his face showed no fear as hundreds of different species watched him enter. The chamber was huge. It could hold 10,000 beings easily. Floating platforms carried delegates from worlds across the galaxy. Some looked like giant insects. Others had tentacles instead of arms. A few glowed with their own light, but all eyes were on the human, walking to the center of the room. Empress Veltara sat on her throne at the far end of the chamber. She was 8 feet tall with purple skin that seemed to shimmer. 4 arms moved as she spoke. Her voice carried across the room without any device. "To make it louder!" "Human," she said. The word sounded like an insult coming from her mouth. "You stand before the Dominion Coalition. We represent 47 star systems. Our fleets number 50,000 ships. Our armies have conquered 100 worlds." Hyunwoo stood straight. He did not bow. This made several alien delegates whisper to each other. Most species bowed to the Empress. Humans never did. "I am Ambassador Hyunwoo Kim," he said. His voice was calm. "I speak for Earth and all human colonies." The Empress laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. Human colonies. 3 small worlds beyond your home system. How mighty you must feel. More laughter came from the alien delegates. They had heard this before. Humans were weak. Everyone knew this. They had no real weapons. Their ships were slow and ugly. They made their money by trading and running messages between stronger species. "Your people have been a useful servant race," the Empress continued. "You carry our goods. You translate our languages. You fix our machines when they break. But now you have become difficult." Hyunwoo waited. He knew what was coming. Earth had refused to give mining rights to the Dominion 3 months ago. They had also refused to let Dominion ships use human space stations for free. These things had made the Empress angry. "We offered you protection," she said. Her 4 hands made gestures as she spoke. "We offered you a place in our great empire. You would be safe, your people would have work, but you said no." "We said no," Hyunwoo agreed. Humans choose their own path. The chamber erupted in noise. Aliens clicked, hissed, and roared their shock. A small species from a backwater system dared to refuse the mighty Dominion? It was unthinkable. The Empress raised one hand. The noise stopped immediately. "Then you have chosen poorly," she said. "I will give you one final chance. Earth will surrender completely. You will accept Dominion rule. Your military will be disbanded. Your ships will be scrapped. Your people will work where we tell them to work." She stood up from her throne. Even at this distance, Hyunwoo could see her eyes glowing with anger. "You have 72 standard hours to accept these terms. If you refuse, we will destroy your pathetic little system. Every human world will burn. Your species will be extinct." The threat hung in the air like smoke. Several alien delegates nodded their approval. This was how things worked in the galaxy. The strong ruled. The weak obeyed or died. Hyun-woo looked around the chamber. He saw the faces watching him. Some looked eager to see humans crushed. Others seemed almost sorry for him. A few looked bored, as if this was already decided. He reached into his jacket pocket. Several guards moved forward, but he only pulled out a small device. It was a human communicator, simple and gray. "I need to contact my government," he said. "Of course you do," the Empress said with another laugh. "Run home, little human. Tell your leaders what awaits them. Tell them about our 50,000 ships. Tell them how we destroyed the Keth Rebellion in one day. Tell them about the glass craters where the Vor cities used to be." Hyun-woo activated the communicator. The signal would take several minutes to reach Earth through the quantum relay network. "This is Ambassador Kim," he said into the device. "The Empress has given us 72 hours to surrender or face extinction." He paused, then added something that made several aliens lean forward to listen better. "Should I tell them about the fleet?" There was silence for a long moment. Then a woman's voice came through the communicator. It was crisp and professional. "Negative, Ambassador. Not yet. Tell the Empress we need time to consider her generous offer." The way she said "generous offer" made it clear what humans thought of the ultimatum. But most aliens did not understand human sarcasm. Hyun-woo put the communicator away. "Earth requests time to consider your terms, Your Majesty." "You have 72 hours, the Empress repeated. "Not 1 minute more. My fleet is already moving to your system. They will arrive just as your time expires. Make your choice wisely, human." With that, the great doors opened again. Hyun-woo was dismissed. He walked out of the chamber with the same steady pace he had entered with. Behind him, the aliens began talking excitedly about the coming destruction of humanity. But if any of them had looked closely at the human ambassador's face, they might have seen something strange. Hyun-woo Kim was not afraid. In fact, he was almost smiling. Halfway across the galaxy, the quantum signal from the Galactic Council reached Earth. It traveled through space in an instant, arriving at a receiver buried deep beneath the city of Seoul. The signal went down through layers of rock and steel to a command center that officially did not exist. Fleet Admiral Bora Choi sat in her chair, looking at screens that showed star maps of the entire galaxy. She was a small woman with gray hair, but her eyes were sharp as knives. Around her, dozens of officers worked at control panels. The room hummed with quiet activity. "The Empress took the bait," said General Tae-jin Park. He was a big man with scars on his hands from years of military service. "She thinks we're helpless." "Good," Admiral Choi replied. "How long until her fleet reaches the outer system?" 71 hours, 53 minutes, reported a young officer. "They're coming in fast, confident." Dr. Yoon-ji Lee looked up from her workstation. She was younger than the others, with thick glasses and ink stains on her fingers. "The Phantom." "Protocol is ready, Admiral. All systems show green." Admiral Choi nodded slowly. Around the room, officers exchanged glances. They had been waiting for this moment for 200 years. Everything humanity had worked for came down to the next 3 days. "Signal all station commanders," Admiral Choi ordered. "Begin final preparations. I want every ship ready but dark until my command." "Yes, ma'am," came the replies from around the room. The Admiral stood up and walked to the main screen. It showed their solar system as the enemy would see it. A small yellow star with a few planets. Earth looked blue and peaceful. There were some space stations around the inner planets, a few mining operations in the asteroid belt, some small ships moving between the worlds. It looked exactly like what every alien species believed about humans. A weak, harmless civilization with no real military power. Admiral Choi allowed herself a small smile. "Let them come," she said quietly. "It's time to show the galaxy what humans can really do." Above their heads, 50,000 alien warships moved through space toward Earth. Their commanders were confident. Their weapons were charged. They expected an easy victory against a defenseless world. They had no idea what was waiting for them in the darkness between the stars. 200 years ago, the first alien ship had appeared in Earth's sky. Captain Mi Young-song remembered that day clearly, even though she had only been a child then. Her grandmother had told her stories about it many times. How the world had stopped to watch the massive vessel hover over Seoul. How humanity had held its breath, waiting to see if they were about to be destroyed or welcomed into something greater. Now Mi Young sat in a small cafe on the trading station orbiting Kepler 442b. To anyone watching, she looked like a simple merchant. Her clothes were worn and practical. Her ship, docked at Bay 17, appeared to be nothing more than a cargo hauler. The aliens around her paid no attention to the quiet human woman sipping her tea. They had no idea that Captain Mi Young-song was one of the most dangerous people in the galaxy. Her communicator buzzed softly. A message from home. She read it carefully, then deleted it. The message had been simple. "Phantom Protocol authorized. All assets report status." Mi Young stood up and walked to the observation deck. Through the large windows, she could see dozens of ships coming and going from the station. Alien vessels of every design filled the space lanes. Giant cargo haulers carried goods between systems. Sleek military ships patrolled the borders. And scattered among them, almost invisible, were human ships. To alien eyes, these human vessels looked pathetic. They were small and ugly. Their hulls were scarred from years of hard use. They moved slowly, careful not to get in the way of more important traffic. Perfect disguises for what they really were. Mi Young activated a hidden panel on her wrist device. A holographic display appeared, visible only to her. It showed the locations of every human ship in this system. There were 43 of them. Each one was commanded by someone like her. Each captain had spent years building their cover story, becoming trusted by the aliens they traded with. Commander Dong-hyun Lim ran a shipping company that moved medical supplies between 12 different worlds. The aliens loved him because he was always on time and never asked questions about what he was carrying. They had no idea that every shipment gave him detailed information about alien military bases, supply routes, and defensive positions. Captain Jae-sung Park operated a salvage business in the Outer Rim. Aliens paid him to clean up the debris from old battles and failed colonies. They thought he was just a greedy human who would do dirty work for money. In reality, he was mapping every abandoned facility and hidden base in 3-star systems. Lieutenant Hyojin An worked as a translator at the Galactic Trade Center. Aliens trusted her because humans were known for their language skills. She attended meetings between military leaders, trade officials, and planetary governors. They spoke freely in front of her, thinking she was just there to help with communication. She remembered every word. All across the galaxy, hundreds of humans had been playing the same game for 2 centuries. They had become merchants, diplomats, technicians, and traders. They had married into alien families. They had raised children on foreign worlds. They had lived entire lifetimes maintaining the illusion that humanity was weak and harmless. It had been Admiral Woo-Jin Han's idea, back when first contact was still new. The old admiral had seen how the aliens looked at humans. They saw a young species with no real technology, no powerful weapons, no vast fleets. The aliens had been polite, but it was clear they thought humans were just another minor race that would serve the more advanced civilizations. Most human leaders had wanted to prove them wrong. They had wanted to show off Earth's military power and demand respect. But Admiral Han had been smarter than that. He had convinced the government to let the aliens think whatever they wanted to think. "Let them believe we are weak," he had said in that famous speech to the World Council. "Let them ignore us while we learn everything about them. Let them trust us with their secrets while we build our strength in the shadows." And so the great deception had begun. Human colonies had been established on 3 small worlds, just as the aliens believed. But these were not the only human settlements. Hidden bases had been built in asteroid fields and around dead planets. Entire fleets had been constructed in secret shipyards far from any trade route. Research stations had developed technologies that no alien species had ever imagined. The aliens had helped without knowing it. They had sold humans raw materials, thinking they were just supplying a primitive manufacturing industry. They had shared scientific knowledge, believing humans could never understand the advanced concepts. They had allowed human observers into their military academies, confident that the weak humans could never be a threat. Every piece of information had been carefully collected and sent home. Human intelligence knew the exact location of every major alien military base. They had detailed plans of enemy ships. They knew which species were allies and which were rivals. They understood alien psychology better than the aliens understood themselves. Mi Young remembered her training at the academy on Titan. The instructors had taught them how to appear harmless and eager to please, how to ask innocent questions that would reveal military secrets, how to seem grateful for any small kindness while memorizing guard rotations and security codes. "The enemy must never suspect what you really are," Director Subin Moon had told her class. "You are not just spies. You are ghosts. You exist in their world, but you do not belong to it. Your real loyalty is always to humanity." It had not been easy. Mi Young had spent 15 years building relationships with the Zelkari Trade Consortium. She had attended their festivals, learned their customs, and pretended to care about their politics. She had smiled when they made jokes about weak humans. She had nodded when they talked about how lucky Earth was to have their protection. All The while, she had been counting their ships and mapping their bases. Commander Dong-hyun had done the same thing with the medical corps. For 12 years, he had transported supplies to military hospitals. The alien doctors trusted him completely. They talked freely about troop movements and casualty reports. They had even let him deliver supplies to secret research facilities. He had memorized the location of every hidden laboratory and experimental weapons program in the sector. The hardest part had been the waiting. Every human agent knew that someday their real mission would begin. But years had passed, then decades. Some agents had died of old age without ever seeing their work put to use. Others had started families and wondered if their children would inherit the same secret burden. But Admiral Woo Jin-han had been patient. So had his successors. They had known that the longer humanity waited, the stronger they would become. Every year brought new technologies. Every decade added more ships to the hidden fleet. Every generation of agents gathered more intelligence about their enemies. Now the waiting was over. Mi-young looked at her communicator again. Messages were coming in from all over the galaxy. Human agents were reporting their positions and requesting orders. The network that had taken 2 centuries to build was finally activating. Captain Byung-ho Kim, operating near the Dominion homeworld, reported that he had detailed scans of every ship in the Empress's personal fleet. Lieutenant Soo Jin-yoon, working at a military supply depot, confirmed that she had the access codes for the main weapons storage facility. Commander In Seok Choi, running a transport company, said he could disable the communication relays for 3 entire star systems. The aliens had trusted humans with everything. Now that trust was about to be used against them. Mi-young walked back to her ship. To anyone watching, she looked like a tired merchant heading home after a long day of trading. But inside the cargo hold of her vessel, hidden behind false walls and fake shipping containers, was enough firepower to destroy the entire space station. She was not the only one. Every human ship in the galaxy carried the same secret. For 200 years, they had been moving weapons and equipment to hidden locations, building supply depots, establishing communication networks, creating the infrastructure for a war that no alien could imagine. The Great Deception was about to end. And when it did, the galaxy would learn what humans were really capable of. Dr. Yoon-ji Lee stood in front of the massive control panel in her laboratory on Luna Base. The room was buried deep inside the moon, hidden beneath layers of rock and metal. For 50 years, this place had been her second home. The aliens thought it was just a research station where humans studied boring things like mineral deposits and solar radiation. They had no idea what really happened here. Her fingers moved across the holographic displays floating in the air around her. Each screen showed different parts of the solar system. Mars looked red and empty. The asteroid belt appeared to be nothing but floating rocks. Jupiter's moon seemed lifeless and cold. Everything looked exactly the way aliens expected it to look. But appearances could be very deceiving. Admiral Choi, Dr. Lee said into her communicator, Phantom protocol is ready for activation. All systems are green across the board. The reply came immediately from the command center beneath Seoul. Understood, Doctor. Begin the sequence on my mark. Admiral Bo Ra Choi's voice was calm, but Dr. Lee could hear the excitement underneath. They had all been waiting for this moment for so long. Dr. Lee's assistant, Engineer Kyung-Ho Bae, looked up from his workstation. "Doctor, I'm reading some unusual sensor activity from the outer system. It looks like the Dominion fleet is moving faster than expected." "How much faster?" Dr. Lee asked. "They'll be here in 68 hours instead of 72. The Empress must be eager to start her attack." Dr. Lee smiled. "Then she's going to get quite a surprise?" She turned back to her control panel and began entering the activation code she had memorized years ago. "Kyung-Ho, start the power-up. Sequence for all primary systems." "Yes, Doctor." His hands flew over his controls. Around them, the laboratory began to hum with energy. Deep beneath their feet, massive generators that had been sleeping for decades started to wake up. The Phantom. Protocol had been Dr. Lee's greatest achievement. She had designed it herself, working with a team of the galaxy's most brilliant human scientists. The project had taken 30 years to complete. Every piece had been tested and retested. Every system had multiple backups. Nothing could go wrong. Least she hoped nothing would go wrong. "Beginning activation sequence," Dr. Lee announced. She pressed her palm against a scanner and spoke her authorization code clearly. "Phantom Protocol, Sequence Alpha 77, Dr. Yoonji Lee, authorization, Gamma Prime." The computer's voice responded immediately. "Authorization confirmed. Beginning system activation across all designated coordinates." Across the solar system, things began to change. Near Mars, what looked like a large asteroid suddenly flickered. For just a moment, its rocky surface seemed to shimmer and fade. Then it was back to normal, just another piece of space debris floating in the void. But now, deep inside that rock, powerful engines were warming up for the first time in decades. Captain Jae-ho Yoon sat in the command chair of what aliens would have called an asteroid. But the Soul's Vengeance was no asteroid. It was one of the most advanced warships ever built. For 25 years, it had been hidden here, disguised as space junk. Captain Yoon had been in command for the last 10 years, waiting patiently for this day. "All stations report ready, Captain," said his weapons officer, Lieutenant Sung Min-oh. "Stealth systems are operating perfectly. Enemy sensors still read us as space debris." "Excellent," Captain Yoon replied. "Signal the fleet. Tell them we're ready to drop the masks." Similar conversations were happening throughout the solar system. Captain Hyejin Kang commanded the Busan's Fury, hidden inside what appeared to be a defunct space station near Jupiter. Commander Woo-sung Kim led a squadron of ships disguised as mining equipment in the asteroid belt. Major So Young-on's vessels had been posing as communication satellites for 30 years. They were not alone. Dr. Lee watched her screens as ship after ship reported ready status. Each vessel had been carefully hidden using the most advanced stealth technology humanity could develop. Some looked like asteroids. Others appeared to be old space stations or broken satellites. A few had been disguised as parts of planets themselves. The aliens had flown past them thousands of times. Trade ships, military patrols, even scientific expeditions had come close enough to touch these hidden vessels. But the disguises had held perfectly. Not once in 2 centuries had an alien suspected what was really floating in human space. "Doctor," Engineer Bay called out, "I'm getting reports from all sectors. 3,000 ships are ready for reveal." 3,000. Dr. Lee still found the number hard to believe, even though she had helped design many of them herself. 3,000 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy, each one more powerful than anything the aliens had ever built. The ships were not just hidden, they were revolutionary. Each vessel used technology that alien scientists said was impossible. Their engines could bend space itself, allowing them to move faster than anything in the known galaxy. Their weapons could punch through any armor ever created. Their shields could absorb energy attacks and redirect them back at enemies. But the most important feature was their stealth systems. These ships could become completely invisible to any sensor the aliens possessed. They could fly right up to an enemy vessel without being detected. They could hide in plain sight, appearing to be harmless debris while actually being deadly predators. Dr. Lee had spent her entire career developing these technologies. She had studied alien science textbooks and found the gaps in their knowledge. She had experimented with theories that alien physicists had dismissed as fantasy. She had turned human creativity into weapons that could reshape the galaxy. "Admiral Choi," Dr. Lee said into her communicator, "all ships are ready. We can begin the reveal sequence at any time." "Not yet, Doctor," came the reply. "Let the Dominion fleet get a little closer. I want them to be completely committed before we show our hand." Dr. Lee understood. The Empress had 50,000 ships heading toward Earth. If humanity revealed their hidden fleet too early, some of those ships might escape. Admiral Choi wanted to make sure that when the fighting started, it would be over quickly. Engineer Bay looked at his instruments again. "Doctor, I'm reading some interesting data from our deep space sensors. The Dominion fleet is maintaining a very tight formation. They're not sending out scouts or advance forces." "They're overconfident," Dr. Lee replied. "They think they're attacking a defenseless world. They have no idea they're flying into a trap." She walked over to a special display that showed the entire solar system. Red dots marked the positions of the approaching alien fleet. Blue dots showed the locations of human ships. There were far more blue dots than red ones, but the aliens couldn't see any of them. "It's amazing how blind they are," Engineer Bay said quietly. "They've been flying through our space for decades, and they never suspected a thing." "That was the point," Dr. Lee replied. "Admiral Han's plan was perfect. Make them think we're weak. Make them trust us. Make them ignore us. Then, when they least expect it, show them the truth." The communicator crackled again. "Dr. Lee, this is Admiral Choi. The Dominion fleet has crossed the outer marker. They're now in our territory. How long do you need for full activation?" Dr. Lee checked her displays one more time. Every system showed green. Every ship reported ready. 200 years of preparation had led to this moment. "Give me 10 minutes, Admiral," she said. 10 minutes and the galaxy will see what humanity can really do." "Understood. Begin final preparations. On my signal, Drop all stealth and reveal our true strength. Dr. Lee turned to Engineer Bay. This is it, Kyung-ho. Send the message to all ships. Prepare for full reveal. The Phantom Fleet is about to become very real. Around the solar system, 3,000 hidden ships waited in the darkness. Soon, very soon, they would step out of the shadows and change everything. Empress Veltara stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Eternal Dominion. The massive ship was 5 miles long and bristled with enough weapons to destroy entire planets. Around her, 50,000 other vessels moved through space in perfect formation. It was the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history. The bridge was filled with her most trusted officers. General Kethvar, her military commander, stood at the tactical display showing their approach to the human system. Admiral Zordan monitored the sensor readings from his position near the main screen. Captain Velkoth commanded the bridge crew, with sharp orders that echoed through the vast chamber. "Report," the Empress commanded. Her 4 arms gestured impatiently as she spoke. "We are now entering the outer edge of human space, Your Majesty," General Kethvar replied. "Our sensors show exactly what we expected. A few small patrol ships, some mining operations, several space stations around the inner planets. Nothing that could threaten even one of our vessels." The Empress smiled, showing her sharp teeth. "Good. The humans know we are coming. I want them to see our fleet and understand their fate." "How? Long until we reach their pathetic little world?" 64 hours at current speed, Your Majesty," Admiral Zordan answered. "Should we slow down to give them more time to surrender?" "No," the Empress said firmly. "They had their chance. Ambassador Kim delivered our ultimatum. If they choose to die rather than serve, that is their decision." She walked to the main viewing screen. Through the transparent metal, she could see space filled with her ships. Massive battleships, fast cruisers, and deadly destroyers stretched as far as the eye could see. Each one carried enough firepower to level cities. Together they were unstoppable. Or so she thought. "Your Majesty," Admiral Zordan called out, "I'm getting some strange readings from our long-range sensors. There seems to be more debris in this system than our charts indicated." "Debris?" the Empress asked. "What kind of debris?" "Asteroids, mostly. Some old satellites. A few pieces that look like wrecked ships. Nothing unusual for a system this old." The Admiral paused, studying his displays more carefully. Although what?" General Kethvar demanded. "The debris seems to be positioned in unusual patterns, almost like someone placed it there deliberately," the Empress laughed. "The humans probably tried to build some kind of defense network and failed. These primitive species always think they can fight us with scrap metal and wishful thinking." Around the bridge, her officers laughed along with her. They had seen this before. Weak species that thought they could resist the Dominion always tried to build defenses. The results were always the same: complete destruction. "Should we destroy the debris as we pass, Your Majesty?" Captain Velkoth asked. "It might interfere with our formation." "No," the Empress replied. "Let it float there. When we finish with the humans, we can use their debris field as target practice for the newer crews." She turned back to the tactical display. It showed their fleet as a massive red cloud moving toward the small blue dot that represented Earth. In a few days, that blue dot would be gray ash floating in space. "Your Majesty," Admiral Zordan said again, "I'm running deeper scans of the system. The readings are unusual." "Unusual how?" General Kethvar moved to look over the Admiral's shoulder. "There are power signatures coming from some of the debris. Very faint, but definitely there. And I'm detecting trace amounts of exotic matter near several of the asteroids." The Empress frowned. Exotic matter was extremely rare and expensive. Only the most advanced species knew how to create it. Humans were far too primitive to work with such materials. "Run a full spectrum analysis," she ordered. "I want to know exactly what we're looking at." Admiral Zordan's hands moved quickly over his controls. The main screen changed to show a detailed view of the human system. Thousands of objects floated in space around the planets. Most looked exactly like what they were supposed to be: rocks, old equipment, and natural debris. But as the sensors probed deeper, something strange began to appear. "Your Majesty," Admiral Zordan said slowly, "I'm detecting massive power sources inside some of these objects. The signatures they're identical to military-grade fusion reactors." "That's impossible," General Kethvar snapped. "Humans don't have military-grade reactors. Their technology is centuries behind ours." "I'm running the scans again," the Admiral replied. His voice was becoming worried. "The readings are consistent. I'm showing reactor signatures from hundreds of sources." The Empress stepped closer to the display. "Show me." The main screen zoomed in on a large asteroid floating near Mars. To the naked eye, it looked like nothing special. Just another chunk of rock that had been floating in space for millions of years. But the sensor data told a different story. "There," Admiral Zordan pointed at the readings. "That asteroid has a power core that could run a battleship. And look, at this." He changed the view to show another object. "This piece of debris has the energy signature of a weapons array." More and more objects appeared on the screen as the sensors probed deeper. Each one showed signs of advanced technology, hidden beneath innocent-looking surfaces. The Empress felt a cold sensation in her stomach. "How many?" she asked quietly. Admiral Zordan worked frantically at his controls. Numbers flashed across his screen as the sensors counted power signatures throughout the system. "I'm reading active reactors in thousands of objects, Your Majesty." "Thousands?" General Kethvar's voice cracked. "That can't be right. Run the scans again." "I've run them 4 times," the Admiral replied. "The readings are accurate. There are massive power sources hidden throughout this system." The bridge fell silent. 50 of the galaxy's most experienced military officers stared at the display in disbelief. The human system, which had appeared empty and defenseless just minutes ago, was now showing signs of a military presence that dwarfed their own fleet. "Your Majesty," Captain Velkoth said carefully, Should we change course?" Before the Empress could answer, every alarm on the bridge began screaming at once. Red lights flashed throughout the command center. Officers shouted warnings as their instruments went wild. "What's happening?" The Empress roared. Admiral Zordon stared at his screens in horror. Your Majesty, the objects, they're powering up, all of them, at the same time. On the main display, the human system was transforming before their eyes. Objects that had appeared to be lifeless debris were suddenly glowing with energy. Massive shapes were emerging from what had looked like empty space. The asteroids were changing. Incoming transmission from the human system, reported the communications officer. On screen, the Empress ordered. The display changed to show a human face. It was an older man with gray hair and calm eyes. He wore a simple military uniform without any of the decorations that marked high rank in most species. Empress Veltara, the human said politely. I am Admiral Chang-Ho Nam of the Human Defense Fleet. I believe you are having some difficulty with your sensors. The Empress found her voice. Who are you? I am the commander of the forces you are now detecting in our system, Admiral Nam replied. I thought it would be polite to introduce myself before we discuss your surrender. My surrender? The Empress sputtered. You dare speak to me of surrender? I command 50,000 ships. Admiral Nam smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Yes, I know. 50,000 ships is quite impressive. Unfortunately for you, we have prepared for your arrival. On the tactical display, more and more objects were revealing themselves as the sensors penetrated their disguises. What had appeared to be a debris field was transforming into the largest military fleet any of them had ever seen. Empress, Admiral, Nam continued. You have made a grave miscalculation. You assumed we were weak because we wanted you to think we were weak. You trusted us because we earned your trust deliberately. You ignored us because we made ourselves easy to ignore. The numbers on the tactical display continued to climb. 1,000 objects showing military signatures. 2,000. 3,000. This is impossible, General Kethvar whispered. Admiral Nam heard him somehow. Nothing is impossible, General. You simply never imagined that a species you considered primitive could be more advanced than your own. The Empress stared at the display showing her system. Her mighty fleet, which had seemed so powerful just minutes ago, was now surrounded by thousands of human vessels. Ships that had been invisible were suddenly everywhere. What do you want? She asked finally. Admiral Nam's expression became very serious. I want you to consider your position very carefully, Your Majesty. You came here to destroy us. Instead, you have flown your entire fleet into what humans call a kill zone. Your ships are surrounded and outgunned. He paused, letting his words sink in. I suggest you reconsider your plans. Empress Veltara's face turned a deeper shade of purple as she stared at Admiral Nam on the screen. Her 4 hands clenched into fists. Around her, the bridge crew watched in tense silence, waiting for her response. You think your tricks frighten? Me, human? She snarled. I have conquered 47 star systems. I have destroyed entire civilizations. Your pathetic deception means nothing against the might of the Dominion. Admiral Nam nodded calmly. I understand your position, Your Majesty. You have built your reputation on being the strongest force in the galaxy. It must be difficult to accept that you were wrong. I am never wrong, The Empress roared. "Attack formation! All ships prepare to engage the enemy!" The Admiral's expression became sad. "I was hoping you would be more reasonable." "Very well. Perhaps a demonstration will help you understand your situation." The transmission ended. The main screen returned to showing the tactical display. Empress Veltara turned to her officers. "General, Kethavar, order the fleet to attack. I want every human ship destroyed in the next hour." "Yes, Your Majesty," the general replied. But his voice lacked its usual confidence. He had been studying the sensor readings, and the numbers were terrifying. The humans had more ships than seemed possible. On the human side of the system, Wing. Commander So-Young-On sat in the cockpit of her fighter. Around her, 24 other pilots waited for orders. They had been hidden inside what looked like a small asteroid for 15 years. Now, finally, it was time to show what they could do. "Phoenix Squadron," her radio crackled. "This is Fleet. Command. You are authorized to engage enemy forces. Show them what human fighters can accomplish." "Understood, Command," So-Young replied. She looked at her instruments. Every system showed green. Her ship was ready for battle. "Phoenix Squadron, form up on my wing. Let's give the aliens something to remember." The 25 fighters launched from their hidden base. To alien sensors, they appeared as tiny dots moving through space. The Dominion fleet barely noticed them. After all, what could a few small ships do against 50,000 massive warships? They were about to find out. So-Young's fighter was not like the crude human ships the aliens had seen before. It was sleek and deadly, built with technology that was decades ahead of anything the Dominion possessed. Its weapons could punch through the armor of any alien ship. Its engines could make it faster than enemy sensors could track. "Target the lead battleship," So-Young ordered her squadron. "Let's see how tough Dominion armor really is." The alien battleship was 3 miles long and carried enough weapons to destroy a small moon. Its captain, Admiral Zefthor, watched the approaching human fighters with amusement. "Look at that," he laughed to his crew. "The humans are sending fighters against a battleship. Should we even bother shooting at them?" His weapons officer, Captain Morgath, studied his displays. "Sir, those fighters are moving very fast. Faster than our targeting systems can lock onto them." "Impossible," Admiral Zefthor scoffed. "Human technology is primitive. Their ships are slow and clumsy." That was when So-Young opened fire. Her weapons were unlike anything the aliens had ever seen. Instead of simple energy beams or projectiles, they fired concentrated bursts of exotic matter that could tear holes in reality itself. The shots hit the battleship's shields and passed right through them as if they weren't there. The first blast punched a hole clean through the ship's armor. The second destroyed an entire weapons array. The third hit the main reactor containment system. Admiral Zefthor stared in shock as his mighty battleship began to explode around him. "How is this possible?" he gasped. He never got an answer. The battleship erupted in a ball of fire that could be seen across the entire system. So-Young's squadron didn't stop there. They moved on to the next ship, then the next. Each attack was devastating. Each enemy vessel that tried to fight back found their weapons too slow to track the human fighters. On the Eternal Dominion, Empress Veltara watched in horror as her ships began dying. "What kind of weapons are those?" she demanded. Admiral Zordan worked frantically at his controls. "I don't know, Your Majesty. They're using some kind of matter manipulation technology. Our shields can't stop them." "Then use more ships. Overwhelm them with numbers." General Kethvar shook his head. "We've sent 200 ships against those fighters. They've destroyed all of them. Our weapons can't even hit the human craft." But the fighters were only the beginning. Captain Ho Yoon stood on the bridge of the Soul's Vengeance. His ship had been disguised as an asteroid for 25 years. Now it was time to reveal what it really was. "All stations report ready, Captain," said Lieutenant Sungmin Oh from the weapons control station. "Excellent," Captain Yoon replied. "Drop stealth protocols. Let them see us." The Soul's Vengeance shimmered and changed. What had appeared to be a large asteroid transformed into a sleek warship 2 miles long. Its hull gleamed with advanced armor that could absorb energy attacks and redirect them back at enemies. Similar transformations were happening throughout the system. Captain Hyejin Kang's ship, the Busan's Fury, emerged from its hiding place, near Jupiter. Commander Woo Sung Kim led a squadron of vessels that had been disguised as mining equipment. Major In-Ho Seo's ships appeared from what had looked like communication satellites. 3,000 human warships materialized from empty space. The Dominion fleet found themselves surrounded by enemies that shouldn't exist. Ships that were more advanced than anything they had ever imagined. Weapons that could destroy their most powerful vessels in seconds. Captain Yoon targeted a group of Dominion cruisers. "Fire," he ordered quietly. The Soul's Vengeance unleashed its main weapons. The energy beams bent space itself as they traveled, moving faster than light and hitting their targets before the enemy could react. 6 Dominion cruisers simply vanished, destroyed so completely that not even debris remained. Engineer Kyung-ho monitored the weapon systems from his station. "Captain, we're operating at 12% power and still overwhelming the enemy. Should I increase output?" "No," Captain Yoon replied. "Save power for the main fleet. These ships are no challenge for us." Across the battlefield, the same scene played out again and again. Human ships that had been hidden for decades revealed themselves and began systematically destroying the Dominion fleet. The aliens' weapons couldn't penetrate human shields. Their sensors couldn't track human movements. Their tactics were useless against human technology. Commander Dong Hyun Lim, who had spent 12 years pretending to run a medical supply company, now commanded a destroyer that could move faster than anything in the Dominion fleet. He led his ship through enemy formations like a shark through a school of fish, destroying everything he touched. Captain Mi Young-song, the woman who had spent 15 years drinking tea in alien cafes and gathering intelligence, now piloted a ship that could become invisible at will. She appeared behind enemy vessels, destroyed them, and vanished before they could respond. The battle was so one-sided that it barely qualified as a fight. It was more like a demonstration of human superiority. On the Eternal Dominion, Empress Veltara watched her mighty fleet being torn apart. In less than an hour, she had lost over half her ships, The survivors were running in panic, but the human vessels were faster and could catch them easily. "Your Majesty," Admiral Zordan said quietly, "we must retreat. We cannot win this battle." "Retreat?" the Empress whispered. "The mighty Dominion does not retreat." "Your Majesty," General Kethvar said urgently, "look at the numbers. We started with 50,000 ships. We now have less than 20,000. At this rate, we'll have nothing left within the hour." The Empress stared at the tactical display. The red dots representing her fleet were disappearing faster than she could count them. The blue dots showing human ships seemed to be everywhere at once. For the first time in her life, Empress Veltara began to understand what it meant to be afraid. Major Inhosio crouched behind a piece of twisted metal on the surface of asteroid station Gamma 7. His team of 12 soldiers moved through the shadows like ghosts. They had been training for this moment for 20 years. The aliens thought. Humans were weak in ground combat. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The asteroid station was a Dominion supply depot that provided fuel and weapons to their fleet. The aliens had built it here because they thought it was safe, hidden in the outer system where humans never traveled. They had no idea that humans had been watching this base for 15 years. "Target acquired," whispered Sergeant Heijin Cho into her communicator. She lay flat on a ridge overlooking the main complex. Through her scope, she could see alien guards walking their patrol routes. They looked confident and relaxed. They had no idea death was coming for them. Major Seo checked his tactical display. His soldiers were in position around the entire base. Each one was equipped with weapons and armor that the aliens could not imagine. Human technology that turned ordinary soldiers into unstoppable killing machines. "Remember what we learned in training," he said quietly into his radio. "The aliens think we are weak because we show emotions. They think we are cowards because we try to avoid fights. They have never understood that our feelings make us stronger, not weaker." Corporal Yeon-Soo Jung adjusted her position near the main entrance. She had studied alien psychology for 10 years. She knew exactly how they thought and how they would react when the attack began. "They believe that logic is superior to emotion," she whispered. "They're about to learn why they're wrong." The truth was something no alien species had ever understood. Humans were not weak because they felt fear, anger, love, and hope. They were powerful because of these emotions. When humans fought to protect something they cared about, they became unstoppable. Every other species in the galaxy had evolved beyond strong emotions. They made decisions based on cold logic and mathematical calculations. They fought wars like chess games, moving pieces according to predetermined strategies. It made them predictable. Humans were different. When a human soldier saw his friend die, he didn't calculate the odds of revenge. He simply acted with fury that could not be reasoned with. When a human mother thought about her children being threatened, she didn't weigh costs and benefits. She fought with desperate strength that surprised everyone, including herself. Colonel Yejin Kwan sat in the command center of the orbital strike platform hidden behind Jupiter's moon Io. She had been monitoring alien communications for hours. listening to their panicked radio chatter as their fleet was destroyed. The aliens kept asking the same questions. How were humans so strong? Where had they gotten such advanced weapons? How had they hidden such a massive fleet? They were asking the wrong questions. "Colonel," said Lieutenant Jun-Ho Park from his monitoring station, "I'm intercepting Dominion military communications. Their commanders are trying to understand how we developed our technology so quickly." Colonel Kwan smiled. "They still don't get it, do they? They think this is about technology. But it wasn't about technology, not really. The advanced ships and powerful weapons were just tools. The real strength came from something the aliens had never possessed: the ability to think creatively under pressure." When human scientists had first studied alien technology, they hadn't tried to copy it. Instead, they had looked for ways to improve it. They had asked questions that alien scientists never thought to ask. What if energy could be bent instead of just transmitted? What if matter could be convinced to behave differently? What if the rules of physics were more flexible than everyone believed? Alien scientists followed established procedures. They built on existing knowledge in predictable ways. Human scientists did crazy experiments just to see what would happen. Most of the time, nothing interesting occurred, but sometimes they discovered something revolutionary. Dr. Yoon-ji Lee had discovered the secret of exotic matter manipulation by accident. She had been trying to solve a completely different problem when her experiment went wrong in a spectacular way. Instead of throwing away the failed results, she had studied them. She had wondered what would happen if the failure could be controlled and repeated. The aliens would never have done that. They would have labeled the experiment a failure and moved on to the next logical step in their research. They had no room in their thinking for happy accidents and unexpected discoveries. Captain Jae-ho Yoon understood this as he watched his ship tear through enemy formations. The Soul's vengeance moved in patterns that confused alien tactical computers. It didn't follow the standard attack formations that were taught in military academies. Instead, it flowed through space like water, adapting to each situation in real time. "Captain," said Lieutenant Sung-min, "Oh, the enemy is trying to predict our next move. Their computers are running battle simulations to figure out our tactics." "Let them," Captain Yoon replied. "They're trying to find logic in human instinct. It's like trying to solve a poem with mathematics." That was exactly the problem. Alien military doctrine was based on logical analysis. Commanders studied the battlefield, calculated the best possible moves, and executed predetermined strategies. It worked well against other logical opponents. But humans didn't fight logically. They fought with creativity, intuition, and raw emotion. A human captain might suddenly decide to ram his ship into an enemy vessel, not because it was the mathematically optimal choice, but because he was angry about losing his friends. An alien computer could never predict such behavior because it made no logical sense. Commander Woo-sung Kim demonstrated this as he led his squadron through the asteroid belt. His ships moved in impossible formations, weaving between rocks and debris in patterns that should have resulted in collisions. Alien targeting computers couldn't track them because the movements seemed random and chaotic, but they weren't random, they were intuitive. Commander Kim was using his human ability to see patterns that logic couldn't explain. He was flying by feel. trusting instincts that had evolved over millions of years of human survival. Back on the asteroid station, Major Co's assault began with devastating efficiency. His soldiers didn't follow the standard procedures taught in military schools. Instead, they adapted to each situation as it developed. Sergeant Cho eliminated 3 guards with shots that bent around corners, using gravitational lensing techniques that alien physicists said were impossible. Corporal Jung disabled the main power plant by overloading it in a way that alien engineers had never considered. Private Kun Wu Lee infiltrated the command center by disguising himself as debris and floating through the ventilation system. The alien defenders tried to respond according to their training. They followed established protocols for repelling boarders. They called for reinforcements and attempted to establish defensive positions. Everything they did was logical and correct, according to their military doctrine. It was also completely useless against humans who ignored all the rules. Within 30 minutes, the entire base was under human control. Major SEO stood in the command center, looking at displays that showed the complete tactical situation. The Dominion fleet was being systematically destroyed. Their supply lines were cut. Their communication networks were compromised. "Sir," said Corporal Jung, "we're receiving surrender requests from 14 enemy ships. They're asking for terms." Major SEO nodded. "Patch me through to Colonel Kwan. She needs to coordinate with Admiral Nam about accepting surrenders." But even as he spoke, he knew the real battle was already won. The aliens had based their entire strategy on the assumption that humans were weak and predictable. They had prepared to fight an enemy that would behave logically and follow established military doctrine. Instead, they had encountered an enemy that thought with both heart and mind. An enemy that combined advanced technology with primitive instincts. An enemy that could be simultaneously calculating and emotional, logical and intuitive, peaceful and terrifyingly violent. The aliens had never faced anything like humanity before, and they had no idea how to respond to an enemy that refused to be what they expected. The bridge of the Eternal Dominion was quiet, except for the steady beeping of alarms. Empress Veltara sat in her command chair, staring at the tactical display that showed the destruction of her once mighty fleet. Red dots disappeared from the screen every few seconds as more of her ships were destroyed or surrendered. "Your Majesty," Admiral Zordon said quietly, "we have lost 37,000 ships. Only 13,000 remain, and most of those are damaged or requesting permission to surrender." The Empress said nothing. Her 4 hands gripped the arms of her chair so tightly that her knuckles had turned white. Around her, the bridge crew worked in shocked silence. None of them had ever imagined they could lose a battle so completely. "General," Kethavar approached her chair carefully. "Your Majesty, we must consider our options. Perhaps we should negotiate." Negotiate? The word came out like poison. The mighty Dominion does not negotiate with inferior species. "With respect, Your Majesty," the general replied, "they do not appear to be inferior." Before the Empress could respond, the communications officer called out, "Your Majesty, we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet. Admiral Nam requests to speak with you." The Empress wanted to refuse. She wanted to order her remaining ships to fight to the death rather than admit defeat. But as she looked at the tactical display, she realized she had no choice. Her empire's greatest fleet had been reduced to scattered survivors in less than 4 hours. "Put him on screen," she said finally. Admiral Chang Ho Nam appeared on the main display. He looked exactly the same as before, calm, professional, and completely in control. Behind him, the Empress could see the bridge of his ship, filled with human officers working efficiently at their stations. "Your Majesty," Admiral Nam said politely, "I hope you have had time to reconsider your position." "What do you want?" the Empress asked. Her voice was barely a whisper. "I want to prevent further unnecessary loss of life," the Admiral replied. "Your fleet is defeated. Your ships are outgunned and outmaneuvered. Continuing this battle will only result in more deaths." The Empress looked at her surviving officers. She saw fear in their eyes for the first time in their careers. These were warriors who had conquered dozens of worlds. They had never known defeat. Now they were facing an enemy they couldn't understand or fight. "You said you would consider our surrender," she said slowly. "What are your terms?" Admiral Nam nodded. "Director Su-Bin Moon of Human Intelligence will handle the formal negotiations, but I can give you the basic requirements." A new face appeared on screen beside the Admiral. Director Moon was a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and a professional demeanor. She looked like the kind of person who never forgot anything and never made mistakes. "Empress Veltara," Director Moon said. "The terms are simple. First, your remaining fleet will withdraw immediately from human space and return to Dominion territory. Second, the Dominion will pay reparations for this unprovoked attack. Third, you will formally recognize humanity as a sovereign power with full rights under galactic law." The Empress almost laughed. "You want us to pay you? For defending yourselves?" "You brought 50,000 warships to destroy our civilization," Director Moon replied calmly. "That constitutes an act of war. Under galactic law, the aggressor is responsible for all costs associated with the conflict." Admiral Zordon leaned over to whisper in the Empress's ear. "Your Majesty, she's correct. If this goes to the Galactic Court, they will rule against us. We violated numerous treaties by attacking without cause." The Empress felt her world crumbling around her. Not only had she lost the battle, but she was also legally in the wrong. Her attack on humanity had been based on arrogance, not law. Now, she would have to face the consequences. "How much?" she asked quietly. Director Moon consulted a tablet in her hands. "Our preliminary assessment puts the cost of our defensive operations at approximately 200 billion galactic credits. This includes the resources expended, the time lost by our personnel, and compensation for the psychological trauma inflicted on our population." 200 billion? General Kethvar gasped. "That's more than our annual military budget?" "War is expensive," Director Moon said without emotion. "Perhaps your government will remember that before starting the next one." The Empress closed her eyes. 200 billion credits would bankrupt several Dominion worlds. It would force her to raise taxes across the Empire. Her people would suffer because of her decision to attack humanity. "And if we refuse these terms?" she asked. Admiral Nam's expression became colder. "Then we will be forced to continue this conflict until you have no ships left to refuse with." To emphasize his point, another group of red dots disappeared from the tactical display. Captain Haijin Kang's squadron had just destroyed 6 more Dominion cruisers that had tried to escape. "Your Majesty," Director Moon continued, "we are also prepared to discuss additional terms. The Dominion has a history of aggression against smaller species. This pattern must end." "Additional terms?" the Empress asked weakly. "The Dominion will submit to regular inspections by human observers to ensure compliance with galactic peace treaties. You will reduce your military forces to levels appropriate for defense only, and you will release all conquered species that wish to regain their independence." Each term was like a dagger to the Empress's heart. The Dominion had built its power on military strength and conquered territories. Without these advantages, her empire would become just another minor power in the galaxy. "This is impossible," she said. "The Dominion Council will never accept such terms." Director Moon smiled for the first time. It was not a warm expression. "Your Majesty, I think you misunderstand your situation. You no longer have the luxury of negotiating from a position of strength." She gestured to something off-screen, and the display changed to show a star map of the galaxy. Hundreds of blue dots were scattered across dozens of star systems. "These represent human assets throughout Dominion space," Director Moon explained. "We have been operating in your territory for 2 centuries. Our people are embedded in your government, your military, and your economy. If this conflict continues, we can cripple your entire empire without firing another shot." The Empress stared at the map in horror. The blue dots were everywhere. Human agents had infiltrated every major Dominion world. They had access to critical systems and sensitive information. They could destroy her empire from within. You've been spying on us for 200 years, she whispered. "We've been protecting ourselves," Admiral Nam corrected. "Your empire has a reputation for conquering weaker species. We made sure we would never be weak enough to conquer, Captain." Mi Young Song's face appeared in a small window on the display. She was sitting in what looked like a Dominion military facility. "Hello, Your Majesty," she said pleasantly. "I'm currently in your main weapons research laboratory on Kepler Prime. I've been working here as a security consultant for 12 years. Would you like me to demonstrate how easily I can access your classified projects?" Before the Empress could respond, another window opened. Commander Donghyun Lim was standing in what appeared to be a medical facility. "I'm in your primary military hospital on Vega Station. I've been managing their supply chain for 15 years. I know the medical status of every senior officer in your fleet." More windows opened. Human agents appeared from locations across the Dominion Empire. They were in government buildings, military bases, research facilities, and economic centers. They had been hiding in plain sight for generations, gathering information and preparing for this moment. "How many?" the Empress asked in a broken voice. "Enough," Director Moon replied. "Your Majesty, you have exactly 1 hour to accept our terms. After that, We will assume you have chosen to continue this war, and we will respond accordingly." The transmission ended. The bridge of the Eternal Dominion fell silent. The Empress sat in her chair, staring at the empty screen. Her empire, built over centuries of conquest and military might, had been revealed as a hollow shell. The humans had been inside it all along, learning its secrets and preparing its downfall. "Your Majesty," Admiral Zordon said softly. "What are your orders?" Empress Veltara looked at the tactical display one more time. Her once mighty fleet was reduced to a few scattered survivors. Her empire was infiltrated by enemy agents. Her people would suffer if this war continued. For the first time in her life, the Empress of the Dominion Coalition prepared to surrender. 6 months after the Battle of Sol, Ambassador Hyun-Woo Kim walked through the corridors of the Galactic Council building. But this time, everything was different. The same alien delegates who had laughed at him now stepped aside respectfully as he passed. The guards who had once looked at him with contempt now saluted. The human delegation's quarters had been moved to the most prestigious section of the building, right next to the chambers reserved for the galaxy's most powerful species. The small, simple rooms they had occupied for decades were now used by minor species from the Outer Rim. Hyun-Woo entered the main council chamber and took his seat. It was no longer in the back row with the other unimportant delegates. His chair was now positioned in the front, at the center of the room where everyone could see him. The nameplate in front of his seat read, "Representative of the Human Federation," in golden letters. The chamber was full, but the mood was very different than it had been 6 months ago. Then the aliens had been confident and dismissive. Now, they watched the human ambassador with careful attention. Some looked afraid. Others seemed eager to please. A few appeared to be calculating how they could benefit from humanity's new position. Empress Veltara was not there. She had been forced to abdicate her throne after the disaster at Sol. The new Dominion leadership had spent months negotiating the terms of their surrender. They had paid the reparations, reduced their military, and released dozens of conquered species. The mighty Dominion coalition had become just another mid-level power in the galaxy. Chancellor Vorith of the Stellar Republic called the session to order. He was an ancient being who had led the council for over a century. His voice carried the weight of experience as he spoke. "We gather today to formally recognize the new galactic order," he announced. "The recent events in the Sol system have demonstrated that our understanding of galactic power structures was incomplete." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Everyone knew what he meant. For thousands of years, they had all believed that military strength was based on the size of your fleet and the power of your weapons. The humans had proven that intelligence, preparation, and deception could be far more effective. "Ambassador Kim," the Chancellor continued, "please address the Council." Hyun-Woo stood up slowly. He looked around the chamber at the hundreds of alien faces watching him. Many of these beings had mocked humanity for centuries. They had treated humans as servants and messengers. Now they waited nervously to hear what the representative of the galaxy's new apex species would say. "Honored delegates," Hyun-Woo began, Humanity comes before this council not as conquerors, but as protectors of peace. Several aliens shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They had heard this kind of speech before, usually from species that were about to demand tribute or territory. "We did not seek this conflict," Hyunwoo continued. "For 200 years we have been content to trade peacefully and contribute to galactic civilization. We revealed our true capabilities only when faced with extinction." Ambassador Thekmar of the Orion Alliance leaned forward. "Ambassador Kim, what are humanity's intentions now? Will you use your power to dominate other species as the Dominion did?" Hyunwoo smiled. "We have no interest in conquest or empire building. However, we will not tolerate aggression against innocent species. The galaxy has seen too much suffering from militaristic empires." He gestured to a section of the chamber, where dozens of small species sat. These were worlds that had been conquered by the Dominion over the centuries. Many had just regained their freedom as part of the surrender terms. "Humanity proposes a new system of galactic governance," Hyunwoo announced. "One based on mutual cooperation rather than military dominance. We call it the Galactic Protection Accord." Chancellor Voreth nodded for him to continue. "Under this accord, all species will have equal rights regardless of their military power," Hyunwoo explained. "Larger civilizations will protect smaller ones. Trade disputes will be resolved through negotiation, not force. And any species that attempts to conquer others will face the combined response of all Accord members." The chamber erupted in discussion. Some delegates seemed excited by the proposal. Others looked worried about losing their traditional advantages. Representative Zalketh of the Centauri hegemony stood up. "And who would enforce this accord? Who would decide when intervention is necessary?" Hyunwoo's expression became serious. "Humanity will take responsibility for enforcement, with oversight from this council. Our fleet will patrol the major trade routes and respond to calls for assistance." What he didn't say, but everyone understood, was that humanity's fleet was now the most powerful force in the galaxy. The 3,000 ships they had revealed at Sol were just the beginning. Intelligence reports suggested that humans had been building vessels in secret for decades. No one knew how many ships they really possessed. Captain Junho Lee stood at the observation deck of the diplomatic vessel Sejong, watching alien ships move through the space lanes around Nexus Prime. 6 months ago, those ships had moved with the confidence of predators. Now they were careful and respectful, always yielding the right of way to human vessels. His ship was one of dozens patrolling the central systems. The humans had taken over many of the security duties that had once belonged to Dominion forces. But unlike the Dominion, human ships didn't demand tribute or threaten weaker species. They simply maintained order and protected trade routes. "Captain," said Lieutenant Su Jin Yoon from the communications station, "we're receiving a distress call from the Kepler system. A group of raiders is attacking a civilian convoy." "Set course for Kepler," Captain Lee ordered. "Maximum speed, and signal the Soul's vengeance. They're closer to that system than we are." "Yes, sir," came the reply. "Captain Yoon reports they'll intercept the raiders in 30 minutes. This had become routine over the past few months. Pirates and raiders who had once operated freely under Dominion rule now found themselves facing human intervention. Most surrendered immediately when human ships appeared. Those who didn't quickly learned why that was a mistake. Back on Earth, Dr. Yoonji Lee worked in her expanded laboratory complex. The facility had grown enormously since the Battle of Seoul. What had once been a small research station was now a massive complex employing thousands of scientists and engineers. Her assistant, Specialist Nara Kim, approached with a data tablet. "Doctor, the new ship designs are ready for review. The Mark 7 series will be 30% more efficient than our current vessels." Dr. Lee nodded as she studied the specifications. "Excellent work. Begin construction on the first prototype. And start planning for the Mark 8 series. I want to stay ahead of any potential threats." She walked to the main display showing human space. Blue dots marked the locations of human ships throughout the galaxy. There were far more than the 3,000 that had been revealed at Seoul. New vessels rolled out of hidden shipyards every month. The galaxy's other species could only guess at humanity's true military strength. "Doctor," Nara asked, "why do we keep building more ships? No one can challenge us now." Dr. Lee smiled. "Because peace is only possible when everyone knows that war would be futile. The stronger we become, the less likely anyone is to test us." When her assistant asked how many ships humanity actually possessed, Dr. Lee gave the same answer she had been giving for months. "The 3,000 we revealed, those were just our patrol fleet." It was true. The Battle of Seoul had showcased only a tiny fraction of human military power. Hidden shipyards continued to produce vessels using technology that alien scientists still couldn't understand. Research stations developed new weapons and defensive systems. Intelligence networks expanded into every corner of the galaxy. Ambassador Hyun-woo returned to his quarters after the council session. The Galactic Protection. Accord had been approved by an overwhelming majority. Only a few species had voted against it, mostly those who had profited from the old system of might makes right. He activated his communicator and connected to Admiral Bo-Ra Choi on Earth. "Admiral, the accord has been approved. We are now officially the galaxy's peacekeeping force." "Understood, Ambassador," came the reply. "Our ships are already in position to begin operations. The galaxy is about to become a much safer place." As Hyun-woo prepared for sleep, he thought about how much had changed. Humanity had gone from being ignored servants to being the galaxy's dominant power. But unlike previous galactic empires, humans had no interest in conquest or exploitation. They simply wanted to ensure that no species would ever again face the threat of extinction that the Dominion had posed. The age of galactic empires was over. The age of human protection had begun. In the depths of space, human ships moved silently through the darkness. They watched over trade routes, protected peaceful species, and reminded potential aggressors that the galaxy now had guardians. The 3,000 ships that had shocked Empress Veltara were just the visible tip of a military iceberg that stretched across dozens of star systems. And if anyone was foolish enough to test humanity's resolve, they would discover just how deep that iceberg really went.